and welcome back to my YouTube channel in a different location and from my phone because best laid plans. So today I thought I would just have an impromptu, informal chat with you guys about what it's actually like being an actor performing in shows during the COVID times. And when I say performing in shows, I mean in venues, indoors, no seeming restrictions, but with the virus still out there. So yeah, I just thought you might be interested in hearing what it's been like, and yeah, just have a kind of informal chat about it. So at the time of filming this, I've just opened The Unquiet Grave, so we've done our first 3 performances of that. It was a show that was meant to happen in 2020, but yay COVID. And by the time you're seeing this video, that show run will have finished. I should have started performances of The Dresser, which is a tour that I'm doing after The Unquiet Grave. That's touring through the autumn, break for Christmas, and then touring in the new year as well in 2022. So these shows are happening as the COVID restrictions are easing, theatre can be back on, and I just thought you might be interested to hear what it's like, some of the difficulties, some of the challenges, some of the drama that's happened. Let's start with the drama, I guess, in terms of the whole self-isolation thing. If you're into theatre, you've probably heard about the shows that have had to close because someone's been pinged on the Test and Trace app, or one person has unfortunately caught COVID, but everyone else has tested negative and not been in contact with anyone, yet the show has had to close for 10 days. That didn't happen with us on The Unquiet Grave because, yeah, well, I'll get into it. The show's a two-hander, so my co-actor and their partner, who is the pianist for the show, they both had to self-isolate, and my co-star was actually sick with COVID. We found out before we had to rehearse together for like our main stint of rehearsals, so we didn't have to cancel rehearsals in any way, but we did have to rehearse on Zoom, which is like fine when it's an online show and you know that it's going to be online, so you're prepared for rehearsing on Zoom. We kind of thought right up until like 2 days before that we'd be able to rehearse in person, and then oh no, we can't. So that was fun. We got through first week of rehearsals. Towards the end of the week, I came down to where we have been performing and where rehearsals were meant to be. We're still rehearsing on Zoom with the other people, but so I could be in the room with the other people who didn't have to self-isolate, so at least some of the stuff could be done in person. Had the day off on Saturday, had rehearsal on Sunday because that was the first day we could all be in the room together after the self-isolation. And then on the Monday, I had first rehearsals for The Dresser, which I was being released for. The director who I've been working with and I've been staying with was like, on Saturday you can go home, it's chill, you know, go and relax and stuff. And because I was having to travel back and forth on the Monday for rehearsals, I was like, if it's okay with you, I'd rather stay so I'm not doing like lots of back and forth from London over a really short space of time. And they were like, cool, that's fine. That Saturday, my housemate in London got diagnosed with COVID. So that was fun. So I've just been stuck here in like Chichester, which has been really lovely. I haven't felt stuck. Everyone's been really, really accommodating, but like no access to any different clothes. I went shopping today because I'm sick of my wardrobe. This is a borrowed jumper. It's a bit of a mess. But more seriously is that if I'd gone home for that day off, if on the Friday after rehearsals I'd gone back to London and then on Saturday positive lateral flow, the Sunday positive PCR from my housemate, I would have had to self-isolate in London and the show that I'm currently doing would have been cancelled. Yeah, I was just like, oh my gosh. And everyone was like, oh my gosh, like we were so close. I remember like joking to the director and saying, there's a parallel universe where I went home and we can't do the show because I'm stuck in London. So there's that, and that's one of the most scary things, I think, coming back to theatre after COVID is that I live in a house share. I live with my boyfriend Josh. If you are a regular viewer of this channel, you've seen him a couple of times. And I have other housemates. And if those other housemates aren't careful, or if Josh isn't careful, that could jeopardize the work that I have coming up, you know? And that's really scary. And then thinking about going on tour for the dresser and the fact that I'll be staying in digs and I'll be staying in other people's houses. I'm not staying in self-contained accommodation because it's too expensive. On Facebook, there's a Facebook group for theatre digs booking. I saw a post a few weeks ago of someone being like, our digs has fallen through because our landlady has COVID, so we need digs for next week in this place. Can someone help us? So that's really scary, the fact that it's not just your responsibility to be as safe as you want or need to be, it's also the other people around you that you might be staying with or living with. Their actions can also affect you and your work and being able to earn money, which is really worrying. The other thing that's happening in theatre, you probably may have heard, because it's just like a general rule in the UK if you're in the UK, but from tomorrow when I'm filming this, the 16th of August, if you're fully vaccinated and you have come into contact with someone who has COVID, you don't need to self-isolate. I am in two minds about this. So I am fully vaccinated and I know people who are double vaxxed, fully vaccinated, and have still got COVID. So with this new variant especially, there's no guarantee that you won't get COVID if you're double vaxxed, which incidentally, that's not how vaccines work anyway. Vaccines don't work being like 100% you won't get the disease. That's not it with any vaccine. But I digress. So for me, I'm a bit like, that's a bit laissez-faire. However, on the flip side, I do think for lots of businesses, especially for theatre, it's just going to make it more tenable, because it's not financially viable to be like, oh, one person got pinged on the app, the whole show has to close. That just isn't a workable model in any sense. For whatever reason, companies aren't bubbling their cast as a whole bubble, especially with things like tours. I was really surprised the whole booking your own digs thing is still a thing. I mean, in the rest of the world it isn't. The company sorts out the accommodation for the cast. But in the UK, I would have thought the whole COVID thing would have led to companies being like, we're going to book out a hotel for our company so they're all in one place together. We don't have to worry about who they're needing to stay with. I'm just really surprised, but it is what it is. So with the fact that they're doing that, and obviously depending on the show, cast can be huge. I know the Les Mis touring cast, including crew and backstage, is like 70 people. That is a lot of people. So this new rule is going to be a really big game changer for theatre. And I think it's going to be really, really well needed. I'm just really cautious. I'm just a really cautious person when it comes to COVID. I wouldn't want to put any of my fellow castmates in danger, potentially, if I have managed to be one of the people who catches COVID even though I'm double vaxxed, kind of thing. I know for the dresser cast we are going to be working in like fixed teams or bubbles, which I think means that only that bubble would be effective if anything were to happen, and they're going to try and keep contact in between different bubbles to an absolute minimum. I'm currently not in rehearsals. I go back into rehearsals during the 3rd week, so I don't know how that's working in terms of how we're rehearsing it and stuff, but that's the plan anyway. And then just in terms of getting back into performing in front of a live audience, firstly, it's been wonderful in terms of, you know, being able to feel an audience reaction. And obviously I've done outdoor theatre in front of an audience over the Christmas of 2020 into 2021. So it's not my first time in front of a live audience since before the pandemic for me. But outdoor is different. You've got to fill a wider space. It's more direct in terms of you can see the audience, they're not in the dark or anything, but also because you have to be so big to make everything carry in a big space that is an outdoor space. It's not as intimate in other ways, if that makes sense. So just the intimacy of being in a room with people as opposed to having to fill a huge outdoor venue has been really, really lovely. And just being able to feel more of that audience interaction. You can feel it more when you don't have like the wind and rain and everything just lashing at you, you know, and the audience isn't like a million miles away from you. It's been weird because obviously masks aren't a thing that are compulsory anymore. So some of the audience wear masks, some of them don't. There's a moment in the show where I come in through the audience. We added that to one of the venues where that was possible, and we really liked it. And I think it, like, artistically and dramatically, it is a great choice. But also, I'm walking through the audience and I don't know if they're wearing masks or not because they don't have to, and how do you enforce it? So yeah, that's really worrying. And you know, I've been avoiding going out into the crowd, you know, at the end of the show. I mean, it's helped that I haven't had friends and family that I've needed to meet, but I've deliberately waited until the auditorium is completely clear, any mingling is done, and we're starting to pack up. That's when I come out. I know the West End shows as well, they have stopped stage dooring for the time being, and I think that's for the best, just because you don't know where your audience has been, you don't know how careful they're being, you don't know if they're vaccinated, you don't know if they work in high risk professions, like you just don't know. And that feels awful because theatre is all about connection. But then at the same time, it's like, if I get sick, then the show has to be cancelled. Or if I get sick, then it might stop my housemates from being able to go out and work. You know, it's kind of all of these layers, and also just not knowing if I'm being overly cautious or I'm not being cautious enough. And yeah, that's a difficult thing, because you see some people not being as cautious as you, and then you think, well, I think, because I overthink everything, like, am I being too cautious or am I not? In our first rehearsal for The Dresser, the producer spoke to us about how they're planning to work with the COVID restrictions and things, and was like, please be cautious and careful. But then leaving the rehearsal with one of my castmates, they were like, well, I'm still going to go to the pub on a Friday night. It's kind of trying to balance the emotional well-being of people needing connection, needing to socialize, needing to let off steam, with the physical caution or physical well-being of trying not to get sick and jeopardizing the show and jeopardizing yourself and jeopardizing other cast members or other people you live with. And that's really hard. I think it's great that we're starting to find solutions to these things, absolutely. And I do think, whilst I have my reservations on how safe the new rules are, I do think that the whole you don't need to self-isolate if you've just been pinged and you're double vaxxed, I think it is really, really needed. I also don't know what's going to happen with shows needing people to be vaccinated and things, which is a sticky issue I don't want to get too much into, but I've already seen some casting calls asking for, like, explicitly asking for double vaxxed people to audition for this role or whatever. I know that there are productions that, even if they're not saying explicitly in the like offer stage, are like, we need you to be vaccinated. I also know performers who are very cautious of the vaccine and are not vaccinated. The particular person I have in mind hasn't had any issues with that yet, but I don't know if that's going to become an issue, and like that's a whole other thing. But audiences are loving being back, and I think it is very telling that despite everything, you know, we're getting sold out shows. I'm not just talking about like my own show that I'm in, or hopefully The Dresser, once I open it. I don't know what the audiences are going to be like for that, but I can imagine them being good. But like the thing that pops to my head is anything goes, you know, a revival of a show and everyone seems to be raving about it who's interested in musical theatre, and it seems to be packed out. And even though I don't feel comfortable going into a packed out audience where people may or may not be wearing masks, the fact that so many people are shows that there is a hankering for audiences to come back to theatre, which I think is a really promising thing. And I think that's the thing that I'm holding on to at the moment. It's just like, yeah, people want this and people want to come back, and that's good because it means even if there are roadblocks and bumps still to come along the way, and you know, I'm well aware that if there are issues and problems like that, there are going to be companies or buildings that don't survive, but it gives me confidence that theatre as a whole can survive this, and it's just about trying to ride out the storm in a way. So yeah, that's what it's like, just being stuck in someone else's house for 3 weeks because you can't go home, and getting sick of wearing the same clothes over and over again. Yeah, let me know if you're going back to theatre, whether that's as a performer or backstage or any other kind of theatre professional, or if you're going back to watching and seeing shows live. Is that just outdoor or indoor as well with certain restrictions? Let me know. I'll be interested to hear what's going on where you are and where you are at in terms of going back to theatre. Yeah, I'm not ready to go back into an auditorium as an audience member yet, which makes me really sad, but hopefully that time will come soon. So yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing. I would love to have you on the channel. Come on down. Maybe I can film the next video on my camera. Maybe I'll be able to go home and get it. Stay tuned for more theatre content from UK perspective, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye friends!